What if I told you that the deepest shame in your past might actually be the doorway to your greatest transformation? I'm not talking about ignoring the weight you've carried or pretending the mistakes don't matter. I'm talking about something radical, something that 4 people in Scripture discovered when they had absolutely every reason to stay broken. They didn't. And as we explore their stories together, I want you to feel something shifting inside you. Because maybe, just maybe, your past isn't your prison. Maybe it's your preparation for who you're about to become. Let's discover that together. There's a kind of pain that runs deeper than physical injury. It's the pain of identity, when everyone around you has already written your story, and you've started to believe it. When your name becomes synonymous with your worst choice. When you look in the mirror and see exactly what the world has convinced you to see. A mistake, a stain, someone too far gone to be restored. This message is for anyone carrying that weight right now. For anyone who's been labeled, rejected, used, or discarded. For anyone who's felt so ashamed of their past that they've stopped believing in any future at all. The wilderness season we're talking about today isn't about the external attacks or the circumstances that fall apart. It's about the internal war, the one where you're fighting against your own shame, your own self-condemnation, your own conviction that you're fundamentally broken. And here's what I want you to know as we start. You're not alone in this feeling. 4 people in Scripture walk through exactly this kind of darkness. And what happened to them might be what happens to you. Let me introduce you to Rahab first. When we think of Rahab, we think of faith, strategy, and biblical heroism. But let me paint you a different picture. Imagine carrying a reputation that precedes you everywhere. Imagine your name being whispered in marketplaces, your past being the first thing people remember about you. Rahab was a prostitute in Jericho, and in her culture, in her time, that wasn't just a job description. It was a stamp on her identity. It was how she was known. She carried the weight of being used, the humiliation of being seen as disposable, the internalized belief that this was the only value she could ever offer. That's the real Rahab we need to understand. Not the victorious one yet, but the broken one. Now meet Mary Magdalene. We imagine her as a background figure, but I want you to sit with the reality of her story. She was possessed by demons, and in her world, that meant she was isolated, feared, seen as spiritually corrupted. The pain wasn't just internal, it was a prison of everyone's judgment and rejection. She was someone people crossed the street to avoid, someone mothers warned their children about, someone who had lost control of her own mind, her own body. When you're trapped like that, when you're fighting something you can't control, when the world is telling you that you're fundamentally defiled, the shame becomes suffocating. Then there's the Samaritan woman at the well, 5 times married, living with a 6th man who wouldn't even commit to her. In her community, she was the whispered about woman, the one mothers used as a cautionary tale. She was drawing water at noon, not in the morning or evening when other women gathered, because she couldn't bear the weight of their eyes on her, their judgment, their whispers. She was literally isolating herself in the heat of the day to avoid the shame of being seen. Her identity had become inseparable from her failures. She was the woman who couldn't keep a man, the woman who must be flawed somehow, the woman who deserved to be alone. And Zacchaeus, a tax collector. But not just any tax collector, a chief tax collector who had gotten rich stealing from his own people. In his society, tax collectors were despised, seen as traitors, as people who had sold out their own community for wealth and power. Zacchaeus had built his success on corruption. He'd look in the mirror every morning knowing exactly what he was, a thief, a betrayer, a man who had chosen greed over integrity. He was literally small in stature, but the weight of his shame, that was massive. And because he was despised, He couldn't hide from his own awareness of it. Everyone confirmed it. Everyone knew. There was no escape into denial. Here's what I want you to feel about these 4 people. They weren't just carrying a moment of failure. They were living inside a complete collapse of identity. For Rahab, it wasn't just, I made a bad choice once. It was, this is who I am. This is all I'll ever be. This is what my life is worth. That's a different kind of pain than we usually talk about. That's the pain of internalized shame, where you've stopped fighting against the world's judgment because you've started to believe it yourself. Mary Magdalene wasn't just struggling with demonic possession, she was experiencing the terror of losing herself entirely, of being inhabited by something that wasn't her and having absolutely no power to stop it. The demons weren't just a spiritual problem. They were her isolation, her exposure, her marked identity as someone too broken to deserve community. The Samaritan woman wasn't just lonely, she was invisible by choice, a woman so convinced of her own worthlessness that she'd rather face the literal heat of the midday sun alone than risk another moment of judgment. She was performing invisibility because visibility had become unbearable. And Zacchaeus wasn't just dishonest. He was climbing a sycamore tree because he wanted to see Jesus pass by. And even in that moment of reaching toward something spiritual, something redemptive, he had to hide. He had to literally climb a tree because he knew that if anyone saw him, if anyone in his community saw him trying to approach something good, they would mock him, reject him, remind him that he was incapable of change. He couldn't even seek redemption without shame. Notice what unites them. It's not their specific sins, it's the internalization of shame. The moment when the world's judgment becomes your own judgment, when you stop fighting against what people say about you because you believe it. And that's where the real crisis lives. That's where the real transformation has to happen. Now, here's where the turning point begins, and I need you to feel what happens next. Because what these 4 people experience isn't someone arriving to tell them they're better than they think. It's not a motivational speech about self-worth. It's something far more radical. Jesus walks into Jericho, and Zacchaeus is in that tree. And in that moment, Jesus doesn't ignore him. He doesn't shame him further. He doesn't say, "Come down and let's talk about what you've done wrong." He says something that must have shattered Zacchaeus completely. "Zacchaeus, come down immediately. I must stay at your house today." I must. Not I could. Not, would you like me to? I must. Jesus is essentially saying, you matter this much to me. Your presence matters. Your redemption matters. I'm choosing you. With Mary Magdalene, Jesus doesn't lead her to a confessional. He doesn't ask what she's done. He speaks to the demons directly, and he casts them out. He restores her to herself. He gives her back her own mind, her own agency, her own body. And then, this is crucial, he doesn't hide her away. He doesn't send her to live in secret. She becomes one of his closest followers. She becomes a witness to his resurrection. He's essentially saying, your brokenness doesn't disqualify you, it prepares you. The Samaritan woman comes to the well expecting invisibility, expecting judgment, expecting that same isolation that's become her refuge. And Jesus, a Jewish man, which already breaks every social boundary, asks her for water. He initiates conversation with her. He sees her. But here's what's even more powerful. He doesn't shame her about her 5 marriages and her current situation. He names it, yes, but he names it with the gentleness of someone who sees the whole picture. He sees the person underneath all that relational wreckage, and he offers her something that transforms everything. Everyone who drinks this water will be thirsty again, but whoever drinks the water I give them will never thirst. He's talking about an identity shift, about belonging, about never being alone again. And Rahab. We don't have dialogue with Rahab the way we have with the others, but we have something just as powerful. When the spies arrive at her home, when she chooses to hide them and turn against her own city, she's making a radical choice. She's saying no to the identity the world has given her. And then, when Jericho falls, when everything shatters, she and her family are saved. She's not erased from history as a former prostitute. She's woven into the lineage of Jesus himself. Her name appears in Matthew's genealogy. She becomes a mother, an ancestor, a woman whose legacy isn't her shame, it's her faith. Do you feel the shift happening? These aren't stories about people who tried harder or believed in themselves. These are stories about people whose shame was completely reframed by being fully seen and loved anyway. Here's what I'm realizing as we sit with these stories, and I think you're realizing it too. The shame you're carrying, the identity the world has stamped on you, the person you've convinced yourself you are. It's not your final identity. It's not your destiny. It's not the whole truth about who you are. These 4 people had every reason to stay broken. Every social reason, every spiritual reason, every personal reason. Their shame was validated by their entire world. But in the moment when Jesus met them, when he saw them fully and didn't look away, something shifted. Not because they suddenly felt better about themselves, not because they changed overnight, but because someone they didn't expect to care about them chose to care about them anyway. Someone they had no reason to trust chose to trust them with radical inclusion and redemption. And here's the perspective shift that changes everything. Your past isn't your disqualification. Your failures, your shame, your brokenness, these don't make you less capable of transformation. They make you more capable. They prepare you. They deepen you. They make you someone who understands grace, who knows what it means to be broken and restored, who can offer that same mercy to others. Zacchaeus became a man known for generosity and restitution. Mary Magdalene became a devoted follower who witnessed the resurrection. The Samaritan woman became an evangelist in her own city. Rahab became part of a sacred lineage. They didn't erase their pasts. They were transformed through them. Their shame became a testimony to grace. Their brokenness became a doorway to purpose. So here's what I want you to hear in this moment. Wherever you are, whatever shame you're carrying, you are not what was done to you. You are not your worst choice. You are not the identity that's been stamped on you by rejection, by failure, by circumstance. You are someone who is seen fully, known completely, and loved anyway. And that changes everything. Not because it erases the past, but because it transforms what the past means. Your wilderness season of shame, that's not a punishment. That's not a mark of God's rejection. That's the place where grace meets you most deeply. That's where you discover that you're worth pursuing, worth restoring, worth redeeming. This week, I want you to sit with one question. What if the shame you've been carrying isn't the end of your story, but the beginning of your transformation? What if the very thing you're ashamed of is about to become the source of your greatest compassion and purpose? Because if Rahab, Mary Magdalene, the Samaritan woman, and Zacchaeus could move from shame to strength, from isolation to belonging, from being broken to being whole, then maybe, just maybe, so can you. And that's a story worth believing in. That's a redemption worth walking toward. Let's talk about this together in the comments below.